I had neglected to inform my son that the home surveillance cameras were functioning once more, and the following day when I examined the footage, my spirit shattered. My son Demonte and his wife Nadine were captured orchestrating a ruthless, premeditated scheme, simulate an electrical malfunction, and arrange a deadly plunge down the cellar steps to disguise my demise as a mishap. The child I'd nurtured single-handedly after his father's passing lounged there, tallying life insurance benefits as though my existence was mere merchandise. In that instant, I understood I wasn't merely facing kin disloyalty. I had emerged as the latest prey of a habitual murderer. What they hadn't anticipated was that the woman they intended to enter had stealthily set a snare that would draw them straight into its grasp. Pause for a second and envision yourself in that garage observing your own son, scheming your assassination on video. What's your subsequent action? Share your ideas in the comments and let me know your location. The fulfillment from a task expertly completed has forever been my utmost gratification. Positioned in my garage this Wednesday afternoon, I traced my calloused fingers over the freshly restored surveillance setup, sensing that accustomed dignity from 35 years of technical labor. The November breeze seeped through the panes, yet within my residence, the dwelling I'd constructed with these very hands in 1998, all seemed cozy and protected. For 10 days, those cameras had served as costly ornaments following a voltage spike that disabled the primary panel. Today, after 4 hours of meticulous reconnection, each sensor was impeccably sharp, every audio device capturing the faintest noise. At 62, my vision requires bifocals, but my fingers still comprehend wiring networks superior to folks twice my junior. This home embodied all I'd labored for. Every cable I'd threaded through these partitions, every socket I'd mounted, it was entirely mine. When Jamal passed away 10 years prior, I'd contemplated selling, but this spot contained too many recollections. Moreover, Demonte required a haven when his world crumbled. And what sort of mother would I be if I didn't aid my sole offspring? Vehicle doors thudding drew me from my reverie. 5:45 precisely. Demonte and Nadine were timely for our regular suppers. I cleaned my palms and proceeded to the entrance, catching Nadine's chuckle from the driveway. That chuckle once enchanted me when Demonte initially introduced her 2 years back. Recently, something regarding it appeared contrived. Mom. Demonte's tone bore artificial enthusiasm I'd been detecting more frequently. How's the old abode? I hugged my son, noticing how slender he'd become. No grievances. Been occupied with some wiring tasks around the place. You know I detest allowing matters to accumulate. Nadine advanced with that flawless grin that never touched her gaze. Selena, you labor too intensely. A woman your age shouldn't be scrambling about repairing items. That's why experts exist. Experts demand what I earn in a month for labor I can accomplish in a few hours. I responded, guiding them indoors. Besides, it maintains these aged hands active. Throughout dinner, I found myself watching them more closely than I normally would. Maybe it was the technician in me, trained to notice when something isn't functioning the way it should. Nadine kept steering the conversation back to the house, asking about property values and hinting around about whether I'd thought about updating my insurance. Demonte barely met my eyes, giving vague explanations about his job search that didn't quite add up. Any luck with those interviews? I asked, while cutting into my braised chicken. He shifted in his seat, uneasy. Times are tough, Mom, but I've got a few promising leads. That's wonderful, Nadine chimed in smoothly. Selena, you're so generous with that monthly allowance. $800 really goes a long way. The way she said it sent a cold ripple down my spine, like they believed it was owed to them rather than a choice I made to help family. Then she went right back to the house again. You know, she pressed, have you thought about upgrading your security system? Those old cameras probably aren't reliable anymore. I was just about to mention that I'd spent the entire afternoon getting the whole system back into perfect working order when the phone rang. Mrs. Thompson from adjacent, hysterical about a plumbing drip in her cellar. Might I inspect it? Her deceased spouse had perpetually managed such affairs. Certainly, Louise, I'll arrive shortly. I disconnected and pivoted back to Demonte and Nadine, who were already collecting their jackets. Apologies, children. Obligation beckons. No issue, Mom, Demonte stated, still evading my gaze. We ought to depart regardless. I escorted them to the portal, that persistent unease intensifying. Something was amiss this evening. Nadine's probing concerning security, Demonte's evident distress. But Ms. Thompson required assistance and community took precedence. As their vehicle departed, I recognized I'd utterly omitted mentioning the cameras were operational and new. The call had disrupted my line of reasoning completely. Tomorrow, I'd inform them during tea and conduct a thorough assessment of the entire network. After 35 years of diagnosing technical glitches, I discovered the optimal method to detect problems was monitoring all when individuals believed nobody was observing. Thursday dawn came with that brisk November sharpness that rendered everything appear keener. I'd slumbered fitfully, my thoughts churning over the prior night's odd supper strain. By 9:30, I was in my garage with hot tea, prepared to execute that extensive surveillance network evaluation. The various screens activated with gratifying precision, every perspective of my residence shown in high-resolution sound capture so distinct I could detect the freezer buzzing. 35 years of technical labor had instructed me to value superior setups, and this network competed with anything specialists bill fortunes to deploy. I was fine-tuning sensor positions when I detected a latch in my front entrance. The chronometer indicated 9:45 a.m. Via the family room sensor, I observed Demonte and Nadine enter themselves, proceeding with the relaxed assurance of folks who fit there, but they weren't meant to be present. Demonte had referenced employment discussions, Nadine chores. My digit lingered over the speaker when something in their conduct halted me abruptly. They were surveying cautiously, inspecting nooks attuned for my existence. This wasn't relatives stopping by for a cordial call. Then it struck me. They were unaware the cameras were functional. The previous night's call had cut me off before revealing the fix. They still thought the network was inactive. They believed they were unseen. "Ideal," Nadine remarked, her tone impeccably audible through the sound. "He's absent, and those cameras remain dysfunctional from the voltage spike." Demonte appeared uneasy, fidgeting anxiously. "Rifling through her private documents seems improper, Nad." Nadine's chuckle was unlike the enchanting noise I'd recognized. This was frigid, strategic. "Demonte, we've deliberated this Saturday dawn. We render this appear as a wiring mishap in the cellar. Your mother's perpetually fiddling there. Utterly credible." My veins froze. Saturday dawn. Wiring mishap. They weren't intending to pilfer from me. They were intending to slay me. The policy payout solely is $250,000. Nadine proceeded, extracting binders from my chamber bureau, plus the residence worth exceeding $700,000 altogether. Sufficient to settle your betting obligations and begin anew. Demonte's complexion blanched. "I realize the funds would resolve all, but it's my mother, Nadine." "Your mother who's dominated your existence for 34 years, she retorted. "Henry Lawson was tougher to persuade than you, and that succeeded flawlessly. Henry Lawson. The moniker signified naught to me, but her nonchalant demeanor chilled my flesh. "Who's Henry Lawson?" Demonte inquired. Nadine beamed. That impeccable grin I'd once deemed captivating. An elderly gent in Birmingham with a fine residence and gullible disposition. Passing record stated natural reasons, no probe required. Doris Fletcher in Mobile was simpler still. Poor soul merely tumbled down steps after transferring her estate. The space whirled about me. This wasn't urgency or kin avarice. This was a routine. Nadine was a hunter, and I was merely her freshest quarry. "You never disclosed they truly perished," Demonte murmured. "What did you assume occurred?" "They relocated to Arizona," Nadine's tone oozed disdain. "Demonte, mature. This is reality's function. The frail are devoured by the robust." I viewed my son, the lad I'd nurtured solo, incline gradually in concurrence. Whatever virtue had resided in him was being methodically eradicated by this lady's venom. Saturday dawn, 7:30 a.m. Nadine continued, dispersing papers on my tea table like a commander plotting strategy. Wiring jolt in the cellar garage, plunge down steps, postponed emergency dial by 11,000. Will be mourning relatives with a lucrative horizon. One day. I had one day before they schemed to assassinate me in my own abode. As I perched encircled by the instruments and expertise that had forged my life, I acknowledged omitting to note those cameras could have been the most fortunate blunder I'd ever committed. Nadine had slain twice prior, but she'd never aimed at someone who could foresee her approach. The pursuer had just turned the pursued, and she was oblivious yet. The gauge on my console displayed 1015 p.m. As I maneuvered into the lot of Hayes and Partners, my grip was firm, firmer than throughout the morn, because now I possessed a strategy. The astonishment of revelation was past. What awaited was execution. Kendra Hayes's chamber aromaed of hide and resolve. She was junior than I'd foreseen, perhaps 45, with keen sight that overlooked zilch. I'd phoned ahead, employed the term crisis, and she'd vacated her day. "Ms. Briggs, you referenced a homicide plot on the line. I must hear all." I broadcasted the captures on my device. Nadine's voice permeated the area. Saturday dawn, 7:30 a.m. Wiring jolt in the cellar garage. Plunge down steps. Kendra's visage stiffened with each phrase. This isn't frantic kin covetousness, Ms. Briggs. This is expert senior mistreatment with slang. You noted she alluded to prior casualties. Henry Lawson in Birmingham, Doris Fletcher in Mobile both expired after asset shifts. She was already keying on her machine. I'm arranging an urgent capacity assessment with Dr. Ellis. If they're scheming to assert you're intellectually inadequate, we require health records verifying contrary-wise. Can you arrive by 3,000? Definitely. Excellent. I'm also summoning my confidential sleuth. If this lady has performed this before, there will be traces. Dr. Ellis's facility was a 20-minute journey through known districts that abruptly seemed alien. All appeared identical, but I was perceiving it through the prism of someone designated for demise in 30 hours. The mental appraisal was exhaustive recollection exams, puzzle resolutions, queries on recent affairs. Dr. Ellis had been my doctor for more than a decade, and her worry was authentic. Selena, your mental capability is outstanding, superior to most women 15 years junior. She endorsed the formal papers with command. What you've depicted isn't delusion. It's endurance response to a genuine peril. By 4,000, I was back in Kendra's chamber where her sleuth had revelations that altered all. Nadine Carter doesn't exist, he declared, scattering records across Kendra's surface. True identity is Alana Simmons. She sought regarding 2 dubious passings, Henry Lawson in Birmingham and Doris Fletcher in Mobile. Both inquiries stay active probes. Kendra inclined ahead. Pending mandates. Active mandates in Alabama. Monetary deceit, senior mistreatment, and now presumed slaying. Regional authorities can detain immediately. The elements were aligning with alarming lucidity. Alana Simmons was a stalker who focused on age casualties, and Demonte had presented me to her like a package offering. What's our schedule? Kendra queried. They're plotting the slaying for Saturday dawn. That provides us. I glanced at my timepiece. 35 hours. Ample. Kendra was already grasping her device. I'm contacting Detective Marcus Reed. He leads the Senior Offenses Division. With current mandates and your captured proof, we can have her detained before she comprehends what struck. What about Demonte? Kendra's look mellowed marginally. Plot to perpetrate slaying bears, grave duration, but if he collaborates and witnesses against her, there could be alternatives. The captures clarify she's the orchestrator. By 5 explorers, our tactic was established. Tomorrow morn, Detective Reed would examine all proof. The health appraisal shielded me against ability disputes. The pending mandates granted law enforcement instant detention power. Ms. Briggs, Kendra uttered as I readied to depart. You've achieved something extraordinary here. Most casualties of senior mistreatment never foresee it. You not only identified the menace, you're halting a recurrent killer. Striding to my vehicle, I sensed something I hadn't felt in ages. The contentment of a scheme coalescing. Alana Simmons had committed one vital error. She'd presumed I was merely another powerless elder awaiting exploitation. Tomorrow she'd discover that some quarry retaliates. The twilight breeze bore the fragrance of fall foliage and potential. In 31 hours, either I'd be deceased in my cellar or Alana Simmons would be restrained. I knew which result I was wagering on. The abode seemed altered when I returned that twilight. Identical barriers, identical furnishings, but now every recess harbored possibility for proof. I progressed through my before-supper regimen with rehearsed normality while my upgraded monitoring network seized everything in pristine sharpness. Demonte and Nadine reached at 7 precise their Thursday twilight beams, as foreseeable as timekeeping. But tonight I was attuned for more than supper dialogue. "How was your day, Mom?" Demonte asked, settling into his customary seat. "Fruitful?" I answered, which was the understatement of the era. "Handled some vital affairs in the city." Nadine's gaze honed slightly. "Oh, anything intriguing?" "Just elder errands, physician appointments, paperwork. You know the drill." The falsehood emerged effortlessly. Let them believe I was just another senior simpleton meandering through her leftover days. During supper, Nadine pardoned herself to place a call. Through the upgraded sound network, her tone transmitted flawlessly from the culinary area. "Elliot, it's Alana. Saturday dawn is verified. Yes, 7:30 a.m. Exact. No, the old lady doubts nothing. Ensure your removal squad is prepared by 9:30. Elliot, another participant in this lethal contest." I archived the moniker as Nadine re-entered the table with that rehearsed beam. Regrets about that labor call. After supper, they shifted to the parlor while I tidied plates. My senses attuned to every syllable through the surveillance network. "I can't continue this." Demonte's tone was scarcely above a murmur, gazing her in the eye, aware of what we're scheming. Demonte, we've reviewed this. Nadine's tolerance was eroding. You owe $60,000 to folks who shatter limbs for tardy remittances. Your cutoff is Sunday morn. What precisely do you think transpires if we don't proceed? 60,000 betting obligations. Abruptly, Demonte's despair made impeccable sense. There must be another path, he implored. There is no other path. Nadine's tone sharpened. You think I relish this? You think I desire to become what I am? But this is endurance, Demonte. Your mother perishes, or you do. Select. The nonchalant savagery of it stunned me. My own son diminished to this unfeasible computation. Inform me about Elliot, Demonte said after a prolonged quiet. Elliot Kane. He manages the mechanical aspect. Fabricated papers, removal procedures, observer oversight. He's been executing this for 25 years across 7 states. Never apprehended. Observer oversight. Occasionally neighbors become inquisitive. Occasionally old acquaintances inquire excessively. Elliot manages those scenarios. The extent of this venture was clarifying. This wasn't solely slaying. It was structured offense with a casualty tally extending across state boundaries. Saturday dawn, 7:30 a.m. Nadine persisted, her tone, now professional. You'll be here premature, allegedly verifying on your mother. I'll be in the culinary preparing tea. She'll descend to the cellar garage like she perpetually does. And then wiring mishap. The garage has uncovered cabling old apparatus. Very plausible for a woman her age who demands on performing her own fixes. She'll be discovered at the base of the cellar steps. What if someone probes? They won't. Elliot will be here by 9:30 as to guarantee the site appears impeccable. By midday, we'll be morning kin organizing a burial. I positioned at the basin, mechanically cleansing the same dish repeatedly as they orchestrated my demise with the proficiency of a corporate conference. The policy funds liquidate in 45 days, Nadine appended. Residence transaction can occur within 90. We'll be in another territory with fresh personas before anyone considers inquiring. Fresh personas, naturally. Alana Simmons was likely just one moniker in a lengthy roster of presumed identities. By 9:30, they were departed, leaving me solitary with the burden of what I'd acquired. I devoted the subsequent hour assessing every capture, duplicating files to numerous sites, forging an indestructible sequence of proof. 28 hours. That's all the duration I had remaining before they anticipated discovering me, deceased at the bottom of my own cellar steps. But Elliot Kane and his removal squad were about to uncover that some elders don't perish silently. Friday morn brought the sort of lucidity that precedes a tempest. I was awake before sunrise tea and grasp, evaluating the ultimate inventory that would decide whether I survived or perished in 18 hours. The cellar garage, their selected execution site, needed extra encompassing. I deployed 2 tiny sensors in the overhead, orienting them to seize every perspective where they schemed to arrange my mishap. The sarcasm wasn't misplaced on me. They'd selected the one chamber in the abode where I possessed total mechanical superiority. By $9,000, I had reserve capturing networks throughout the residence, each one imperceptible to anyone not seeking them. Remote archiving assured that even if they demolished my gear, the proof would endure. Detective Reed's chamber aromaed of stale tea and resolve. He was precisely what I'd anticipated, a seasoned expert who'd witnessed sufficient senior mistreatment instances to identify the genuine article when it entered his portal. Ms. Briggs, I've been probing offenses against elders for 18 years. What you've revealed here is the most intricate venture I've ever encountered. I broadcasted him the captures. His look grew somber with each disclosure. Alana Simmons, he stated, accessing files on his machine. We've been pursuing her across 4 states, pending mandates for deceit and presumed slaying in Birmingham and Mobile. Your proof provides us all we require. What's the strategy? Tomorrow, 6:30 a.m., we situate operational units around your estate. The instant she and your son appear, we advance. With the mandates and your recorded plot proof, this is watertight. What about Elliot Kane? Reed grinned sternly. Elliot Kane has been on our watch for 25 years. If he appears for removal task, we'll be awaiting. This could dismantle a whole felonious web. The judicial safeguard took another hour. Kendra had readied papers that secured every facet of my monetary existence. Profiles immobilized against unsanctioned entry. Asset shifts obstructed health orders unassailable. They can't access anything now, she guaranteed me. Even if something airs tomorrow, your holdings are fully shielded. What about the captures lawfully acquired on your own estate with justifiable doubt of felonious action? They're permissible and ruinous. Any competent accuser would term this case a boon. By 1:00 p.m., I was back home encircled by the soft drone of concealed sensors and reserve networks. All was prepared. Expert enforcement, judicial safeguard, health papers, and sufficient proof to incarcerate Alana Simmons for eternity. I strolled through my abode, truly examined it for the first time in days. Every chamber contained memories of the existence I'd forged here, the son I'd nurtured, the horizon I'd envisioned. Tomorrow that son would stride through my front portal, aiming to observe me perish, but he'd be striding into a snare 35 years in the forging. The telephone chimed. Detective Reed's tone was composed but pressing. Ms. Briggs, we just received intel that Kane's squad is already in Atlanta. They're treating this earnestly. So are we? Yes, ma'am. We are. Attempt to rest tonight. Tomorrow will be fierce, but you've executed everything correctly. This lady's murdering rampage concludes with you. After disconnecting, I positioned in my garage, encircled by the instruments that had forged my life and would now preserve it. Alana Simmons had committed one deadly misjudgment, and she'd presumed I was merely another defenseless casualty. Tomorrow morn, she'd uncover that some quarry arrives fitted with claws. 18 hours to go. I was prepared. The final meal. That's what persisted circulating in my thoughts as I arranged the table for 3. In 12 hours, Demonte and Nadine anticipated discovering me deceased at the bottom of my cellar steps. Instead, they'd be the ones confronting a very distinct sort of conclusion. They arrived at 7 precise Demonte, bearing blossoms a gesture. That might have been endearing if I didn't know he was scheming to participate in my burial tomorrow evening. "Mom, you appear weary," Nadine said, settling into her seat with a rehearsed worry. "Are you sensing okay?" "Just splendid," I responded, dishing the stewed chicken I'd devoted the afternoon crafting, anticipating a serene Saturday at home. The sarcasm was lost on them, but not on me. During the meal, Nadine extracted a folder envelope. "Selena, I know this might appear abrupt, but we've been contemplating your coverage circumstance. These papers just need a swift endorsement to refresh your heirs." I scanned the document's lawful-appearing forms that would probably relinquish my life accumulations. "What's the haste? Can't this postpone until Sunday?" "Well, the representative said there might be fee adjustments if we don't handle these by tomorrow." Her beam was impeccable. Rehearsed lethal. It's truly just a procedure. Demonte gazed at his dish, incapable to encounter my gaze. His grip trembled marginally as he sliced his poultry. "You know, Nadine," I said casually, "I've been experiencing some recollection problems lately. Sometimes I omit the simplest matters. Just yesterday, I utterly omitted to note something vital to you both." Her gaze honed. "Oh, what was that?" "I'll recall eventually," I said, taking another morsel. "These things return to you when you least anticipate." After the meal, they shifted to the parlor while I tidied their tones, transmitting clearly through my upgraded sound network. "She seemed more bewildered than usual," Nadine murmured. "Did you observe how she wrestled with those coverage forms?" "Maybe we don't need to proceed with this," Demonte said urgently. "If she's deteriorating naturally, maybe we just await." "Demonte," her tone sliced like a dagger. "Your lenders don't concern about your mother's natural decay. They want $60,000 Sunday morn, or they commence fracturing bones. We adhere to the scheme. 7:30 a.m. tomorrow. 7:30 a.m. exact. You'll be here premature verifying on her like the dedicated son. I'll be preparing tea in the culinary." She descends to the cellar like she perpetually does on Saturday morns, and then wiring mishap. The cabling there is archaic, ideal for what we require. She plunges down the steps. We dial 911 in frenzy. By the time responders arrive, it's overdue. I positioned at the basin, mechanically cleansing dishes while they directed my demise. "What about subsequently?" Demonte inquired. "Elliot appears at 9:30 for removal. Ensure everything appears impeccable. We portray the mourning kin, gather the policy funds, vend the residents. By New Year, we're in Texas with fresh personas." At 9:15, Nadine stepped outdoors to place an ultimate call. Through the pane, I observed her stride the driveway. "Elliot, it's Alana. Tomorrow, 7:30 a.m. "Yes, everything's prepared." The cellar garage, just as we deliberated. 9:30 a.m. for removal. Ensure you bring the wiring gear to arrange the site properly. When she re-entered, her facade was solidly positioned. "Well, we should permit you to obtain your repose," she said, pecking my cheek with lips that might as well have been frost. "Major day tomorrow." "Yes," I concurred. "I have a sensation tomorrow will be very unforgettable." After they departed, I strolled through my abode one ultimate time, verifying every sensor, every reserve network, every fragment of proof that would terminate Alana Simmons's murdering rampage eternally. 9 hours. In 9 hours, Detective Reed's operational unit would be positioned. In 11 hours, Demonte and Nadine would stride through my front portal anticipating committing slaying. Instead, they'd stride into the most thorough snare I'd ever constructed. I dispensed myself a goblet of wine, something I seldom did, and sat in my preferred armchair. Tomorrow morn, either equity would be dispensed or I'd be deceased. But tonight, for these concluding hours, I was still Selena Briggs, and I was prepared for conflict. The countdown was nearly concluded. 6:30 a.m. exact. I was awaiting in the parlor when I detected their latch in the bolt. Demonte entered foremost blossoms and grasp, his pretext prop for being here premature. Nadine trailed, bearing a flask of tea and donning the facade of a dedicated daughter-in-law. "Mom, you're up premature," Demonte said, his tone meticulously buoyant. "We thought we'd verify on you before you slayed me at 7:30, I said serenely. The quiet that ensued was total. The blossom slipped from Demonte's digits, dispersing across my rug like proof at a offense locale. Nadine recuperated first, that rehearsed beam gliding into position. "Selena, what a peculiar thing to utter. Are you sensing disoriented this morn?" "Not disoriented at all." I grasped for the pad beside my armchair. "Let me demonstrate you precisely how lucid my reasoning is." The initial capture filled the chamber. Nadine's tone pristine through my upgraded sound network. Saturday morn, 7:30 a.m., wiring jolt in the cellar garage. Plunge down steps, postponed 911 dial. Demonte's visage went pale as ivory, Nadine's facade ultimately fractured. "You've been capturing us," she murmured, "for 4 days. Every syllable, every scheme, every admission. I navigated through the files. Henry Lawson in Birmingham, Doris Fletcher in Mobile, your true identity, Alana Simmons. Pending mandates in 4 states. This is unfeasible," Nadine growled. "Those cameras have been dysfunctional for days. I repaired them Wednesday afternoon. I omitted to note it Thursday morn. The most fortunate blunder of my existence. I stood sensing more robust than I had in decades. You see, Alana, you committed one deadly mistake. You presumed I was merely another powerless elder." Demonte crumpled into a seat, his visage interred in his palms. "Mom, I'm so remorseful. I never desired this. The betting obligations, the menaces. $60,000, I said. That's what my existence was valued to you. It wasn't meant to be like this." Demonte's tone fractured. "She said it would appear natural that nobody would be harmed. Nobody would be harmed." I broadcasted another capture. Nadine's frigid tone depicting Henry Lawson's demise. Doris Fletcher's mishap. She's slain before Demonte. "You weren't assisting her commit deceit. You were assisting her commit slaying." Nadine's poise fragmented entirely. "You don't comprehend what it's like out there. These old simpletons perched on fortunes while youth struggle. So, you resolved to accelerate the legacy procedure. They were going to perish anyway. I just rendered it lucrative. The admission was impeccable, seized in high definition by censors she never knew subsisted. But I wasn't finished yet. "Inform me about Elliot Kane," I said. Who but her gaze betrayed her? "Elliot, your removal expert. The man you contacted last night to synchronize eliminating proof after my slaying." Demonte looked up abruptly. "Slaying? You said it would be a mishap. It would have been," Alana retorted, "if your mother hadn't transformed into some kind of monitoring specialist." "Actually," I said, verifying my timepiece, "Elliot's not arriving. None of your web is functional anymore." As if on signal, the front portal erupted open. Detective Reed entered with his operational unit, arms extended, emblems visible. "Atlanta Police. Nobody stir." Kendra Hayes trailed, bearing a valise full of judicial papers. "Alana Simmons, you're detained for plot to commit slaying, senior deceit and pending mandates in the demises of Henry Lawson and Doris Fletcher." The subsequent few minutes were a haze of Miranda rights restraints and the methodical disassembly of a felonious venture that had functioned across multiple states for years. "How long have you known?" Demonte inquired as they restrained him. "Since Thursday morn," I responded. "When I overheard you scheming my demise You selected this Demonte. When she presented you the choice between my existence and your obligations, you selected the funds. As they guided him away, I sensed something I hadn't anticipated. Not contentment, but sorrow. I'd nurtured that lad, cherished him, sacrificed for him. But the man they were detaining wasn't my son anymore. He was an outsider who'd been willing to observe me perish." Detective Reed approached as the last of the operational unit cleared out. "Ms. Briggs, it's concluded. We've detained 7 members of the Kane Web across Georgia. This venture is terminated." I surveyed my parlor, the same chamber where they'd schemed my slaying, where I'd assembled the proof that preserved my existence. "What transpires now?" "Now you endure," Reed said plainly, "and Alana Simmons never slays again." Outside, I could detect the neighbors assembling, attracted by the law enforcement presence. Soon there would be inquiries, journalists at hearing. But for now, in this instant, I was simply a woman who'd declined to become a casualty. The chronometer on my ledge read 7:15 a.m. 15 minutes ago, I was supposed to be deceased. Instead, I was finally utterly vital. 7 months after the detention, I sat in the courthouse audience as Alana Simmons received a verdict of 30 years to life for multiple slayings, senior mistreatment, and plot. The magistrate's words, "Your strategic predation on susceptible elders represents the worst of human essence," lingered in the atmosphere. When she glanced at me one final time, I saw no regret, only frigid strategy. Some individuals, I discovered, cannot be reclaimed. Demonte's verdict was tougher. He received 15 years for plot and senior mistreatment. From the accused's table, his gaze still held the lad I nurtured, not the man who'd assisted scheme my demise. The magistrate reminded all that disloyalty within kin, where reliance is presumed, merits the strictest responsibility. The Kane-Webb's hearings unfolded across 4 states. Elliot Kane himself drew multiple life durations. The authorities estimated their venture had aimed more than 40 aged casualties over 25 years. My covert capture supplied the pivotal proof that dismantled the whole enterprise. Courtroom triumphs, however, were only the commencement of something grander. Transformation began in my own district with Mrs. Thompson, the widow whose frantic call had initiated the salvage in motion. I deployed a complete monitoring network in her abode and instructed her how to identify the warning signs of senior deceit and control. "You've provided me something I lost when George died," she informed me, grasping the protection inventory we'd constructed. "The sensation that I can safeguard myself and make my own decisions." Word disseminated swiftly through Atlanta's elder society. Within months, I was advising families across the metropolis, fortifying homes, reviewing finances, and informing loved ones about predatory methods. The local authorities invited me to address community gatherings. Detective Reed introduced me by stating I'd not only preserved my own existence, but demonstrated how elders could retaliate against predators who assume they are defenseless. The Georgia Attorney General's office requested me to assist draft senior safeguard protocols, and my tale became central to a statewide consciousness drive. The communication was straightforward and potent. Age brings expertise and practical abilities to discern and oppose peril. Dr. Ellis remained my physician and became an intimate ally and proponent. "You've converted personal injury into community intent," she informed me. "That's not simply enduring, it's victory." Kendra Hayes, my attorney, and I conducted judicial seminars instructing elders how to shield assets and detect illegal plots. My abode transformed from a quarry into a bastion. The cellar garage that had been a planned slaying locale became an instruction hub where I taught basic monitoring and practical self-defense. Neighbors began verifying on each other. We formed an unbreakable web of mutual aid. Mrs. Thompson organized weekly tea gatherings where we exchanged dubious activity accounts and celebrated minor successes. The ache of Demonte's disloyalty never fully diminished, but it became beneficial. It honed my comprehension of how predators exploit sentimental ties and kin interactions. In every demonstration I delivered, I emphasized a harsh truth. Sometimes the greatest menaces arrive from those we trust utmost. Correspondence arrived from across the nation, hundreds of missives from families who'd heard the tale. One age agent in California wrote that my exemplar had empowered him to question his kin's suspicious monetary conduct and confront a grandson who'd been pilfering from him. Those missives were daily reminders of why this labor mattered. Alana Simmons had viewed elderly people as expendable barriers to riches. Each senior who learned to defend themselves disproved that dreadful presumption. 7 months earlier, I had been marked for demise by my own kin. Now I awoke in a home teeming with security, surrounded by people who respected rather than exploited my decades of expertise. My schedule was packed addresses, advisories, tea dates with allies who valued my presence. The greatest victory wasn't merely enduring a murderous plot. It was discovering that the truest kin had been awaiting in my community all along, ready to appreciate what I had to offer. Sometimes the divine places us in circumstances that test not just our endurance but our belief in humanity itself. Selena's tale reminds us that disloyalty narratives like this aren't just about offense. They're about the fortitude we uncover when everything familiar becomes perilous. When kin turns against us, the divine provides other routes to safety and intent. The most powerful instruction from grandma stories like Selena's is that age isn't vulnerability. It's accumulated sagacity awaiting the right instant to radiate. These disloyalty narratives teach us that predators often conceal behind affection, but genuine concern never demands we surrender our safety or honor. Selena's technical expertise built over decades became her salvation when kin failed her. The divine works through our readiness and community bonds. The forgotten camera disclosure, the neighbor's crisis call. The professional relationships Selena had cultivated, these weren't coincidences. They were sacred designations that saved her life and exposed a felonious web. Senior mistreatment happens because we assume age equals helplessness, but Grandma's narratives prove that expertise, readiness, and belief create an unbeatable amalgamation. When we honor our elders' sagacity instead of exploiting their reliance, we build communities where predators cannot flourish. Selena's transformation from casualty to proponent shows us that the divine can use our darkest instants to illuminate paths of service and protection for others. Your turn to impart sagacity. What disloyalty narratives or grandma narratives have shaped your understanding of kin reliance and resilience? Drop a comment below sharing your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring life narratives that remind us how fortitude can emerge from our greatest challenges. Which city are you listening from?